On today's show, I'm still sick, and even worse, the Dodgers got even better. Very frustrating reacting to the Dodgers making the big splash of signing our old friend Blake Snell, what it means for not just the Dodgers and the Padres going forward, what other options they may have to get a replacement for Joe Musgrove, but also what does it say about the state of baseball, and a whole bunch more. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Wednesday, November 27th. Bit of a delayed upload, but we still are here. We still ball. As always, I'm your host, with sometimes occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You may be familiar with my other baseball-related work over at justbaseball.com. I'll be writing for that site soon. I also help work on the newsletter, which will keep you up to date on all the baseball happenings and whatnot. So go check that out. And you can check me out on Twitter/X, and then also Blue Sky at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO. On today's pod, we got to react to easily the biggest news probably of the offseason so far. Blake Snell signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers. It came sort of out of nowhere, in the middle, in the thick of night, you know what I mean? And it's a crazy news announcement, so we're going to talk about it. Apologies if once again I'm sounding a little bit nasally. I'm still a little bit sick, but I feel like given the news, I felt like you gotta push through, gotta have a little bit of a flu game here, you know what I'm saying? And we're also going to talk about the question that I think is on a lot of people's minds, not just mine, but I think that it's genuinely something that's being talked about, which is just the state of baseball and its ecosystem. And I think Blake Snell is a big part of that, but I do think that there's been some, I don't want to say lazy takes regarding that, but takes that don't get the full picture, I think. And we're going to talk about that on today's episode too, as well as some other free agents and whatnot. So we'll try and vibe on this Thanksgiving Eve. Hope you all are enjoying whenever you listen to this, either enjoying the holiday, the pre-holiday, whatever it is. Wishing you all the best. So let's talk about it. Blake Snell announced on Instagram first last night that he was signing with the Dodgers. I am kind of wondering if this will be the new trend, is that players whose big time free agent acquisitions for the Dodgers will make their news announcement on Instagram first. It happened with Shohei Ohtani, obviously, last offseason, when he posted on Instagram first, and that's how we heard about it. And then we got the update from the reporters, your usual suspects, about what the deal was. In this case, that's kind of what happened here. Blake Snell, 5 years, $182 million contract, pending physical from Jeff Passan, sources tell me, and Jorge Castillo, World Series champions, get the two-time Cy Young winner and the first nine-figure deal of the winner. Now, I will say that there were some rumors that at least the Dodgers and him had been talking. I believe that there were some rumors reaching back towards the deadline, and that actually it tracks because the Dodgers, have a lot of starting pitching injuries, so it makes sense that they would be interested in Snell, especially considering how dominant he was in the second half. Kind of the story of Snell's career, but man, is he good when he's on. This is a little bit of a blow to the Padres faithful, and I think that one of the things about this is it's just it's not that there's no rumors for it, but it definitely happened a lot sooner maybe than people expected, because Blake Snell infamously last offseason, it was a long time before he signed, whether it be him and Boris, one or the other, whatever it was, and he signed immediately this time. So I think that speaks volumes to him, his ability, and just what the market is right now. Other reported aspects of the deal, this coming from Alden Gonzalez, $52 million signing bonus, a limited no-trade clause, no opt-outs, and some deferred money. Now, I know that last part freaks everybody out, but we'll talk about that in the next segment, a little bit more about the state of the game. But first, let's just talk about Snell. Obviously, this is a pitcher, I've talked about him before, he is my favorite pitcher in baseball, so this was a tough night for me, and I imagine tough for everybody else too, don't get me wrong, but very, very, very unfortunate. 5 years, 182. But Snell, it's really interesting because on the surface level, like, signing Blake Snell in a vacuum does carry some risk with it, because this is a player who you're basically counting on him to continue to do this very unorthodox sort of not approach in like the mechanical how he pitches. I mean, a little bit in that too, but he always starts off pretty poorly. And it's almost like you're always just expecting him to get better. Now, here's the thing. The Dodgers are very smart, and Blake Snell was very smart to get this deal done early. That way you don't have what happened last offseason when he signed really late, and he basically had to use the first half of the season to get into the zone. Because Snell, when he's not on, is like a bottom 50 pitcher. Or not bottom 50, like a bottom 10 pitcher. Like, he's awful. And then once he gets into the groove of things, he's absolutely electric. So that's why I think a lot of people were like freaking out about this, because this is a 2-time Cy Young winner, for God's sake. Since when he came back on July 3rd, this past season, he had a 1.23 ERA, which ranked first in the majors. He had a 1.77 FIP, which ranked first in the majors. His strikeout rate, 12.77 per 9, was also first in the majors. And just as a little touch on, if you guys like whip, he was also first in that. Bryce Miller, Paul Skeens, Chris Sale, Michael King, by the way, 5th. Just throwing it out there. Michael King was low-key not low-key, if you're a Padres fan, you knew, but in terms of the context of the game, we know, maybe sometimes media doesn't want to talk about anything that the Padres do well. I'm being a little petty, what can I say? Michael King was just absolutely dominant last year, just to give you guys some perspective. Framber Valdez and Nick Martinez, by the way. Shouts to Nick Martinez. Really having a nice run elsewhere. I'm starting to wonder if, like, the Padres, low-key, are they breaking their pitching curse a little bit? Because everybody that they've been either signing or and keeping has turned out pretty well lately, and some of the pitchers they lost, like Martinez, like Lugo and Waka, have all turned out good too. So maybe the Padres are getting better at this. Maybe that new pitching lab that they had, that myself and Aram Layton talked about on last week's episode about Roki Sasaki, has maybe had a little bit of impact in all this. So that's, we're looking good. Guys, I'm looking for silver linings here. But all in all, this gives the Dodgers a potential rotation of Blake Snell, Shohei Ohtani, Tyler Glasnow, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Bobby Miller, and based on early reports, it's not official yet or anything, but they could also have Roki Sasaki, who might not even be in their rotation to start, or they go 6-man. I don't know exactly. That's just what we're looking at right now, and it's an absolutely devastating rotation in basically every way. Don't get me wrong. And a lot of people were freaking out about this. I will say, first of all, I want to give some flack to the Giants. I really don't think anyone's talked enough, and this could just be me in my bubble, but I really don't think people have talked enough about how crazy it was that the Giants let him walk for nothing. Like, it's really crazy. For 1 year of Blake Snell, as Spot Track tweeted out, $32 million, a 2024 third-round pick, and $500,000 of bonus pool money. And look, the Giants deserve so much blame for the fact that they've lost now like 3 all-pro, all-star, all-MLB pitchers over the last few years for nothing. Okay, not just Blake Snell, but I know he's been shaky, but you still could have traded him. Carlos Rodon at the time was amazing, and Kevin Gausman. That team, similar to how we've talked a little bit about on this podcast before, that the Cardinals are low-key a badly run organization now. San Francisco Giants, low-key a badly run organization now. And I think that the championships have distracted from that, rightfully, but they're a mess. And I think that sentiment about the Giants that I'm just making now, it kind of connects to what I want to talk about in this next segment, which is about the health of the sport and the ecosystem and what we're dealing with right now with the Dodgers buying up all these players and what have you. And I think that the reason I was attacking the Giants is because it relates to this in the sense that I really think we cannot just be blaming just the Dodgers, and that there are other teams at fault for what's going on right now. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit, guys. But first, of course, we got to take a second to talk about one of our sponsors, and it is one of our legendary sponsors that has been with us on the show for a while, and that is our good friends over at FanDuel. NFL fans, let me tell you, you want to start a run, you want to get a big return, you can on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Whenever you get in a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So when you're eating your turkey, when you're eating your cranberry sauce, when you're eating your smashed potatoes, and perhaps if you're like me, some pernil or whatever, you're watching your football games, and if you're feeling antsy, you're feeling, you got a hunch, you got a good hunch, FanDuel's right there for you guys. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, everybody. America's and specifically American football's National Football League, the NFL's official sportsbook partner. Go check it out. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving, a little thriving, and vibing here on the Locked On Padres podcast, talking about the Blake Snell signing, all of my thoughts. Let's now, I mean, again, there's not much like of a need to talk about like I think Blake Snell's ability is as a pitcher. I just don't think that that's really, I think everybody knows the kind of skills and the technicalities of everything, but I think that the larger conversation is a real one, and we've actually seen a couple of like players like Michael Harris and Vinny Pasquantino express a little bit of like rolled eyes vibes at the signing, and I think that that's a lot of people. I got a lot of texts from people being like, you know, I feel like I shouldn't watch baseball anymore. Like, this is dumb. And I think that there is a lot of angles to attack this from. First of all, let's get the petty stuff out of the way. Let's do it. I'm doing it for you guys. Genuinely so funny that baseball media tried to frame the Padres as the villains. Like, and even more funny, framing the Dodgers as the underdogs. Were they technically not favored in the series? Sure. But that's like that one. Remember when the Patriots made that Super Bowl run and they beat the Chargers? And then I believe I forgot who it was after that, but they were like a little bit down that year. And Julian Edelman was like making merch and being like, bet against us. And it was like, you know, it's like that joke that people have on Twitter where they're like, the key element of fascism is everything working in favor of you, but pretending it doesn't. That's and they substitute it for whatever with the Dodgers in this case. That it's genuinely hilarious how much the media tried to turn the Padres into villains for reacting to beer thrown at them, I guess, and tossing a ball into a dugout. And then the Dodgers became the underdogs, right? There's such a disconnect from how people feel, baseball fans feel, versus how the media felt, which is that genuine non-Padres, non-Dodger fans, nobody's rooting for the Dodgers. Like, I genuinely do believe that. Outside those two fan bases, like, objectively, I just don't feel like people are rooting for the Dodgers, but I could be dead wrong. It's getting a little bit Durant Warriors vibes for me. Now onto the objective side of things and not the petty stuff. So I think that there's been a lot of reactions. So everybody's saying, you know, there's got to be a salary floor, a salary cap, all this sort of stuff. And the other thing people have been bringing up is the deferral payments. Now, I will say that the deferral payments isn't necessarily super uncommon. I do think Ohtani's was pretty, like, really pushing it in terms of the AAV, but he is still counting and hitting their salary cap or their luxury tax threshold a little bit. It's a little bit complicated, but there have been some people that really wrote well about this. Lindsey Crosby, who used to host Locked On MLB Prospects, he's got a couple good tweets on this, so go check him out on Twitter. But that's one point that people have made. And in terms of those deferrals, guys, like, there are other players that have some deferral, not as much as Ohtani, but Rafael Devers, Chris Sale, Francisco Lindor, Max Scherzer, like, are some guys who have some sort of deferrals and whatnot. I know it's not to this level necessarily, but it's worth noting that this isn't the first time that's ever happened. The second point I think that I want to make is that it's when you say it's bad for the sport, I think that I do believe that. And I've said many times that I think that initially having super teams, having a team that everyone can collectively root against, does boost ratings and stuff like that in the short run. But the key word there is ratings. That doesn't mean that the product and you as a fan are having more fun. That's ratings. And that's the type of stuff that you'll hear them talk about in First Take, as if that's the thing that matters the most. Hey, I used to remember when the beauty of sports was finding the beauty in everything, not just, hey, it's cool that the big market did something, right? So I do disagree with that idea. But when it comes to it being bad for baseball, I think that there's just a lot of areas to attack this from. So again, I do think that initially that there is a little bit of a ratings boost. However, I do believe that eventually people get tired. I think that you saw with the NBA that initial Kevin Durant Warriors, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I believe there was an awful announcing article back on it like a while ago, but the ratings for that NBA Finals were great, even if it wasn't super competitive. It was actually a little bit more competitive than people remember, but again, enough with the cross sports references. My apologies. But then after that, people got really tired of it. And there was a feeling of like you put that league in a headlock. Now, I will say, MLB's a lot different. It's not guaranteed that you're going to win every year. But that's where I come into the second aspect of this, right? Which is that I don't necessarily think this is bad for the sport because the Dodgers are unbeatable. I think it's bad for the sport because there are so many teams and specifically so many fan bases that every offseason and every year just don't get to have fun. The vibes are bad. You know what I'm saying? And before I get, and it's so tiresome when I get these comments, I get it every damn time. Before I get the comment on my YouTube that says, well, you don't complain when the Padres spend a lot of money. It's like, yes, because the Padres circa 2014 never did this. So it's actually healthy for the sport that a smaller market exposed the fact that they could compete on this level, right? It's actually much more interesting, right? It's not, that's like me complaining. That's like complaining about me saying, oh, the Chargers won the Super Bowl. This is great. It's so awesome the way they got all these big stars and they're dominant now. And you're like, oh, but I didn't see you complaining when the Patriots are winning. It's like, well, yeah, because they always do win. The Dodgers always have money and always done this, right? So I do think that it takes a little bit of the juice out of a fan watching experience, right? Not necessarily that they're unbeatable. They very much are. And I must emphasize with Padres fans that like, the Padres did choke. I really do wholeheartedly believe that. Like, they had them last year. And remember, they had them and a lot of their pitching was hurt. So you really can't make any excuses for the Dodgers getting lucky or any sort of thing like that. Like, the Padres blew it. Which is one of the reasons I'm not so bullish on the Padres next year. Just feels like this was your shot. You know what I mean? Weekend Dodgers, playoff slate wasn't as good. I think everybody knows the Yankees were a little bit as a World Series team. We could have had them. We would have killed the Mets too. So that's on them. But I think that when we talk about this, people love to harp on the Dodgers, and it's unfair that they get everybody. But one thing that people miss is that it's a two-way street, right? There are a lot of other teams. We're talking about deferrals. You don't think that other teams could do some of these sort of deferrals or find ways to sign these players? It is not exclusively, and you're still allowed to hate them. Don't get me wrong. The Dodger fan base, the way that they act like the whole, they're just this approach that people often have where it's like people hate you just because they're jealous. It's like, no, actually people sometimes have very good reasons to hate others that are not just jealousy, right? Like there actually is legitimate reason. And it's not that, right? Like I do think that the fans can be really annoying and they're like trying to justify why them being able to take advantage of the rest of the league and take advantage of how flawed the rest of the league and its owners are makes them so cool. And I'm like, it's a little bit 50-50 in my opinion. You have to remember that there are so many teams in the sport, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Tampa, and especially some of those teams that if you look up how valuable their franchises are, how profitable their franchises are, how rich their billionaire owners are, like literally the Cleveland Guardians and the Minnesota Twins have some of the richest owners. Like, I think they're like top 5 richest owners in baseball, or at least they're close to that regard. And those are teams. I'm not talking about someone, even the Rays to an extent, like they don't have as big of a thing now. That I think the problem with that is a long festering issue of baseball not prioritizing fixing this issue of owners that don't want to spend and having no interest in investing in their teams and their product. And that's not just these past few years, that's for decades. Oakland A's, great example. Oh, well, they have no fans. Yeah, because for last 25 years, that fan base has slowly atrophied thanks to their owners' incompetence, willingly destroying the team because of some greener pasture that doesn't exist in Vegas, right? So that, I think, is a result of it too. But there are so many teams. You don't have to spend like the Dodgers, but there are so many teams that could, guys, I promise you, if the Mariners actually woke up and had a real owner, they could go and sign Alex Bregman. They could go sign Yusei Kikuchi, and they could go sign Ha-Seong Kim if they wanted to. They could absolutely do that. You know why? Because the Padres did. The Padres are showing you that you could absolutely do this. Yes, you probably can't compete on the Juan Soto level, but that's kind of the beauty of baseball is it's not just one player makes all, right? So that's the thing, is when we're complaining about this, we need to talk about the other teams that actively allow this to happen. It's like, and also like, I really liked the Tipping Pitches, popular baseball podcast account that tweeted after the Blake Snell thing came out, where it's like, Manfred has to do something about this. And it's like, people who don't understand, this is exactly what Rob Manfred and the rest of the small market owners who orchestrated this system want. You know what I mean? This is what they want. Them to spend nothing, and for fans to be gaslit by the money ball sort of talk into thinking it's possible to win that way. I remind you, you don't need to spend that much, but since 1998, it's a big sample size, there have only been 3 teams outside the top half of payroll to win a World Series. And only one of those 3 was like really low. It was the Marlins when they won, I think in 2003. They were number 25. The others were, I believe, 16 and 17. So they at least, they were like somewhat close to that threshold. And it's not even a big threshold I'm giving there, right? Not a big cutoff. But alas, they don't do anything, right? So this is a coordinated thing by so many people, including those small market owners who still want to have you believe, yes, guys, anyone can have a successful season. But the same way I'll tell Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers when he got upset with me when I told him the Brewers were going to lose because they were number 24 in payroll or whatever it was. And he's like, no, it feels different this year. No, it's not. If you want to win a World Series, you must spend. It is quite simply as simple as that. And it's not only and exclusively the Dodgers' fault that the rest of baseball is that there's a pox on the sport, right? The owners are a pox on the sport and its competitive balance. And now the Dodgers are taking it further. I will admit on this, they're taking it to a further degree to where I don't know how you fix this because of so many years and in case decades of teams just laying around not doing anything, commissioner laying around not doing anything, to make it just these 5 or 6 teams get to have fun with the free agents, and that's it. You know what I mean? And that's the problem with baseball right now. A late stage baseball capitalism, dare I call it, has infected the sport. And I think that is very scary, very dangerous. But again, you can't exclusively hate the Dodgers for all this. And there's still hope, I think. And that's important to talk about, guys. And we're going to get into that in just one sec. But first, I need to talk to you guys about another bunch of our sponsors. The first of which being Game Time. We've talked about them on this podcast a lot, and that's because they are rootin' tootin' fabuloso. You know what I mean, man? Whatever it comes to, when it comes to the NFL playoffs, when it comes to when we get back to baseball playoffs, hopefully the Padres are in it. They are one of the best ticket marketplaces that you can check out. Last minute deals, all on prices, views from your seats, lowest prices. Game Time has you covered, taking the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. There's flash deals, so it'll go down the closer you get to Game Time. Zone deals where you save even more when you choose a section, and Game Time let them choose the seats. You get all the seat views, all those sort of things. It's great. It's a really great app, so I recommend everybody checking it out. They filter out everything for you and only give you the best deals. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. But folks, we're not done yet. We got one more sponsor to talk about, and that is our good friends over at PrizePicks, ladies and gentlemen. And here's the thing. Over 10 million active members. People love PrizePicks. All you have to do is just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. It's fantastic. And let me tell you guys, it's available. You can get in on the action over 30 states, California, Florida, Texas, Georgia included. They've got all sorts of new deals popping up all the time, all sorts of new community things as well. And if you sign up today, you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win for that bonus. And all sorts of weekly promotions. They change throughout the season and as time goes on. But one of them right now is Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. So go check it out. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And just like that, everybody, we are back thriving and surviving. How about that? Surviving and vibing in this last segment of this podcast. Let's talk a little bit more about Blake Snell and kind of some other free agent stuff. We don't really have too many other updates. The only other thing that we've heard, unfortunately, is that many reporters are saying, like, yeah, the Dodgers aren't done. And yeah, again, it's lame, guys. Like I think that's the way to just the Dodgers are lame. You know what I mean? They're just so lame. It's like, why is this fun? Why is it fun that all the cool free agent stars that everybody knows about, that there's just like 5 teams that they go to, and lately it's been all Dodgers. So I think that's what can I say? I agree with that sentiment. But there are still a lot of big free agents left, and this isn't the only one. In fact, it wasn't even the best free agent pitcher. I think that you can argue that there's 2 guys possibly better than Blake Snell that are free agents, right? Like, I think that that's a really, really important thing to point out. And those are Corbin Burns, right? You could even bring up Max Fried. Max Fried doesn't necessarily require a giant, what's it called? A ramp up time. You know what I mean? So that's another thing. You could argue that Jack Flaherty, if everything he did last year, that he's really good, right? You could argue that Roki Sasaki is a bigger dealer than these guys. And then, of course, you've still got some other really good free agents out there, from, Tyler O'Neill to Jurickson Profar, our boy, Alex Bregman, Willie Adames, Hassan Kim, Gleyber Torres is out there still. Christian Walker is really underrated and really awesome. Pete Alonso, Paul Goldschmidt, Higashioka, our boy. Like, there's still a lot of really, really fun, enticing free agents this offseason that could really make a big impact. But again, as I talked about in segment 2, there is something to be said for vibes and intrigue, and it is not fun when the Dodgers just keep getting more and more. And frankly, I'm really interested to see if we get like another Ken Rosenthal article that's going to talk about how this is good for the game, guys. You know what I mean? This is good for the game. This is good for the game. Not the Padres, though. I hate the way they like buck the trend and actually tried to change the ecosystem a bit. But anyway, enough ranting. So those are the players to look out for. If you want to take a hopeful approach, and again, this is a hopeful approach, you could say, you know what? Maybe this is a sign that the Dodgers maybe they're going to prioritize re-signing Teoscar Hernandez and maybe getting another bat. We'll see. But maybe it tells you that Roki Sasaki, that they think that they might not get him, because again, I didn't even like that rotation that I brought up before. Like, it also includes Bobby Miller, who I know wasn't very good last year, but he's a young, really, really, really high upside pitcher. Like, Bobby Miller's good. I know he was bad last year, but this is a guy who has high velocity, and when he was on, he was delivering gems, especially at the beginning of the season. So like, that guy could be awesome as time goes on. I know that his ERA was 8.52, but he's super young, carries a lot of value, and he might be the 5th star in the rotation, and he's under control. So like, maybe them signing Snell is a sign that they're not going to go out and get Roki Sasaki, because if they did, oh man, I don't know. The Roki Sasaki signing to the Dodgers, in my opinion, would be even worse for the sport. And the reason for that is because Roki Sasaki isn't limited, right, by the usual big time contracts, deferred money. Technically, anyone can get him. And if that dude chooses to be the 8th most important person on a team that just won the World Series, instead of like the number 2 or even number 1 most exciting player that like any team could have, at least most teams could have, that would be really damning for where the sport is at right now in terms of like creating intrigue and having a very spread out sort of field in terms of fun. Again, it's not only about competition, it's also about what's enjoyable. And right now, I just feel like there's a lot of teams that are like, this isn't fun. I just get to watch my team not do anything every year. And I have to hope that we have like 4 prospects come up and be awesome, and then hope that we win before they leave in free agency. That's just not a fun formula, I think, for the rest of the league. Sorry, Dodger fans, that not everybody gets to have fun. But I really am curious to see now what happens the rest of the way. We've heard that Roki Sasaki reportedly is going to take a little bit longer to make his decision. We saw Juan Soto post a troll video that frankly was a little cheesy. I would have respected it more, but I don't know. And again, he's not a professional actor, but he posted a video basically announcing a sponsorship deal with Celsius, an energy drink. But he was like, oh, what's the matter? Not the announcement you were expecting? I don't know. It was just not the best actor. It was a little bit corny. But we'll see about him. The latest report is that the Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, Dodgers, and I believe the Mets have all made him offers. By the way, yeah, the doomsday scenarios are Soto or Roki to the Dodgers. I really do think that those are the doomsday scenarios. Either they get a super duper star, or they get someone who might be a super duper star and he's not costing anything. You know what I mean? Like, they get to just treat him like a prospect. That would be crazy. We'll see. I would really appreciate if the rest of Major League Baseball like tried to get these guys instead of. It just feels so poetically sad that the Padres are trying to buck this trend and beat this sort of system and the way that it usually works. And they are stuck next to the Dodgers. And then there are all these other teams like the Reds who just won't do anything when their division's wide open, right? Just unfortunate, man. But anyway, trying not to rant too much, but what can I say? I'm sick and I'm upset. But yeah, I'm hopeful that there is hope that the Padres are going to get this guy. I've been talking about it for months. I talked about it with Arm Layton last week. With the way they handled Darvish, with the way that Rocky's agent talked about not just Darvish, but AJ Preller, with the fact that AJ Preller name dropped him, with the fact that they traded their future prospects, I just have to hope that they had a plan. So, we're going to see as the winter meetings kind of heat up. I'm curious. I'm hopeful that the Blake Snell signing, maybe it signals that we might get some more signings. I think it's more that Snell wanted to not do what he did last year. I think that might be a product of it, but we'll see. Maybe Boris is going to be like, let's not drag these things out. I'm just going to get my guys paid, and we're not going to do this player option palooza where all of my guys have opt-outs and whatnot, and they're not getting more AAV than they should have, all that sort of stuff. But I will tell you, maybe it will still go that way because technically Blake Snell won, right? Yes, I know that he reportedly had a $150 million deal that he turned down, but guess what? He just signed for 189. So he got the, 34 or 35 million from the Giants, opted out, and then got to get 189. So he still won. So again, Boris is still doing well. And I think that people are like waiting too much or reading too much into the way that he's been handling things. Like, he's doing his job, guys, even if it's annoying. I just don't understand a lot of the Boris hate. But anyway, moving on. I think that there also are some big hitters that I think the Padres should be looking at. I'm curious to see if they re-sign Jurickson Profar. I think that it's most likely we were going to have the next episode of this podcast be the player review on Jurickson Profar. I'm going to save that. I'm going to try to do that on Friday, depending on how I'm feeling. Tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so I'm going to take that day. But again, keep your eyes peeled for that. But again, I think that baseball is in a weird spot. I really don't think there's any doubt in that at this point. But it's just that it's a little bit more nuanced of a discussion than I think a lot of people put into it. So we're going to see how it all breaks down, and you can keep it here, Locked On Padres, to find out, because there's going to be a lot that comes out, man. It's going to be a really fun offseason. I do wholeheartedly believe that, and I do think that there's some trades out there, right? I wouldn't be like totally shocked if we see a Cody Bellinger trade, even maybe a Vladdy Jr. trade. Definitely wouldn't be shocked if we saw a Garrett Crochet trade. So there's also some fun trade candidates. Alec Boehm of the Phillies is probably getting traded. At least that's what I think. Lots of fun, guys. I'm telling you, this is a really fun offseason. So while I was just lamenting the vibe of what it's like being a baseball fan right now, I do think that this is going to be a fun offseason, just even if you're impartial. So look forward to that, and look forward to the rest of this show. We're going to be talking about all the latest news. Don't worry. Keep it here, Locked On Padres. But until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.